My name is Elias Vance. If you were to describe my job at a dinner party, people's eyes would glaze over. I'm a logistics systems consultant. I deal in back-end numbers, supply chain optimization, and the quiet, unglamorous architecture that allows the modern world to function. It's a world of spreadsheets, contracts, and predictable outcomes. By day, I co-owned a successful consulting firm. By night, I was the unpaid, unacknowledged janitor for the chaos my wife's world refused to recognize. The joke around town was that my wife, Lorelei, owned Aurelia, the city's most buzzed-about bistro. The truth was that Lorelei owned the front-of-house illusions, the warm glow of the Edison bulbs, the artfully arranged charcuterie boards, the wine list full of unpronounceable grapes. I, on the other hand, owned the messy, invisible arteries that kept the place from bleeding out. If a delivery truck carrying prime cuts of beef got lost at midnight on its way to Aurelia, I was the one on the phone with the driver, calmly guiding him through industrial backroads. If the payment processing system froze during a Saturday dinner rush, plunging the waitstaff into a smiling panic, I was the guy in the back office, rewriting lines of code, while Lorelei charmed a table of food critics, blissfully unaware. She managed the performance. I managed the reality that allowed the performance to happen. Friday night arrived, smelling of cooling asphalt and fryer grease, an aroma that should be bottled and sold as ode to desperation. I walked into our apartment, a sleek, minimalist space that felt more like a showroom than a home. I expected, if not a warm greeting, then at least a flicker of recognition for the fact that I had just spent 3 hours on the phone with a hysterical produce supplier, convincing him not to cut off Aurelia's credit line. Instead, I found Lorelei perched at the kitchen island. She was in leggings and an old university sweatshirt, her face glued to her phone, her thumb scrolling through Instagram with the focused intensity of a bomb disposal expert. No smile. No, "Hey Elias," just the rhythmic flick of a thumb, like a bored assassin polishing a weapon. I set a paper bag on the polished quartz countertop. The scent of lemongrass and chili from the Thai food I'd picked up felt like an intrusion in the sterile air. "I thought we could eat out on the balcony," I said, my voice sounding unnaturally loud. Without looking up, she murmured, "I already ate." Her words were flat, devoid of apology. Sterling and I stopped at that new wine bar after we went over the staff schedule. Sterling, her father, the restaurant's self-proclaimed co-owner and chief visionary, whose main contribution was telling old stories to wealthy patrons and complaining about the cost of linen napkins. "Right," I said. I stood there holding the cooling bag of food, feeling exactly like a delivery driver who nobody tips. A functional object, its purpose served, and now dismissed. Would have been nice to know. I drove across town for this. She finally sighed, a gust of theatrical exasperation, as though I'd asked her to solve world hunger instead of showing basic consideration. "You're always so dramatic, Elias. Not everything is about you." "True," I said, the words tasting like ash. "Though lately nothing has been about us either. The accusation hung in the air between us, thick and suffocating. Separate meals, separate weekends. We don't even have conversations anymore. Just scheduling updates." Finally, she raised her eyes from the phone. They were flat, annoyed, and utterly devoid of the warmth I remembered from a lifetime ago. "It's a busy season, Elias. We're expanding the brunch menu. You knew that." A bitter laugh almost escaped my lips. Oh, I knew. I knew that I was the one who had analyzed the cost-benefit of a brunch expansion and told her it was a financial black hole unless she could secure better terms on eggs and hollandaise sauce. I knew that I was the one who then spent a week bullying our dairy distributor into giving us a 15% discount. I knew the only reason those new state-of-the-art ovens for the pastry chef had even arrived on time was because I had leveraged a personal favor with a freight company executive I'd known for a decade. I knew that when Sterling inevitably forgot to process payroll on time, it was my carefully crafted automated reminders that saved him from a staff mutiny. "But sure," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "Tell me how busy you are." She smirked. It wasn't a smile. It was a sharp, unpleasant twist of her lips, a weapon she'd honed to perfection. "And you like feeling indispensable, don't you? Don't pretend otherwise." The accusation was so fundamentally wrong, so profoundly insulting, that it momentarily stunned me into silence. I didn't want to be indispensable. I wanted to be a partner. I wanted to be seen. "It used to work both ways," I said, my voice strained. "Lately it feels entirely one-sided." With a gesture of theatrical boredom, she placed her phone face down on the counter. The small, deliberate sound was a dismissal. "Honestly, Elias, You're being clingy. It's boring. Clingy. The word hit me like a physical blow. For wanting to have dinner with my wife, for wanting a simple conversation, for wanting to feel like I existed in our shared life beyond my utility. I nodded once, a slow, deliberate motion. It was the kind of nod a man gives just before he walks into a storm he knows he can't avoid. Okay then, let's be boring for 10 minutes and talk like adults. My tone had shifted. The weariness was gone, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. Do you even want this marriage, Lorelei? Silence descended upon the room. Somewhere outside, a car horn blared, a lonely, angry sound echoing in the city night. She didn't answer. She just folded her arms, leaning against the counter as if I were a difficult customer trying to get a refund past the store's policy. Her posture was defensive, her expression impenetrable. I'm serious, I pressed, refusing to let the silence win. Because I'm not interested in being your roommate. And I'm definitely not interested in playing the role of the stable, supportive husband for your friends while we barely acknowledge each other at home. Embry 4. She tilted her head, and that smirk returned, completely without warmth. It was a mask of condescension. And then she said the 5 words that would detonate our world. If you don't like it, Elias, then leave. The sentence hung between us, stark and brutal, like a neon sign that had finally burned out, leaving only the ghost of its message. It wasn't an emotional outburst. It was a dismissal. A business transaction. Your services are no longer required. For 9 years, I had absorbed the late nights, the forgotten anniversaries, the casual disregard. For 9 years, I had been the silent fixer, the invisible backbone. And in the end, my value was reduced to a simple, transactional ultimatum. I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my set of house keys, and placed them on the quartz countertop. The soft clink of metal on stone startled her more than any shout ever could have. It was a sound of finality. Her smirk faltered. A flicker of confusion, then annoyance crossed her face. Where are you going? She asked, a half laugh in her voice, as if this was all a bluff, a dramatic gesture I'd fold on in a minute. I have clothes in the car, I said calmly, turning toward the door. Been keeping a bag there for months, just in case. You're overreacting. No, I corrected, my hand on the doorknob. I'm reacting. There's a difference. I picked up the bag of Thai food, walked to the trash chute, and dropped it in. The small thud was another sound of finality. I slid on my shoes, my back to her. The clink of the keys on the counter still seemed to hang in the air like a verdict. The hallway smelled faintly of detergent and someone else's dinner. By the time I reached my car, the city was humming under the streetlights, indifferent to another marriage cracking under its own weight. I tossed my work bag onto the passenger seat, started the engine, and pulled away from the curb without looking back. People expect fireworks at endings, screaming matches, broken plates, dramatic betrayals. We had none of that. We had silence so clean it felt surgical. The engine hummed, a steady, impersonal sound, as if it didn't care that my 9-year marriage had just flatlined. I drove without aim for a while, letting the streetlights smear across the windshield, marking time. My destination was a small, soulless apartment I kept in the city, a place that had been a half-abandoned crash pad for months. I'd told Lorelei it was for nights when work ran too late or one of Sterling's urgent crises swallowed my weekends. Funny how paranoia turns into foresight the second someone tells you to pack your ego and go. When I finally unlocked the door, it felt like stepping into a hotel room rented by someone with no hobbies and no attachments. 2 plates, 1 mug, an air mattress I'd never bothered to upgrade. It had been a backup plan. Now, it was headquarters. I dropped my bag and opened my laptop on the small particle board desk. I didn't write a list of grievances. I'd rehearsed those in my head 1,000 times in the dead of night. This was a list of facts, a system analysis. I thought about Sterling, a man who coasted on the charm of a bygone era. He once called me the invisible backbone of Aurelia, patting me on the back with a condescending warmth. He'd emphasized the word backbone, but I had always heard the word invisible. Lorelei's friends, the yoga moms and boutique owners who populated Aurelia's patio, thought I was just a numbers guy who didn't get the art of hospitality. Right, because paying the electric bill is such a soulless, unartistic task, people think marriages collapse from one big betrayal, a single, catastrophic event. More often, they erode like a slow roof leak, quiet, steady, unnoticed, until one day the entire ceiling caves in. My marriage had been leaking for years. The ultimatum was just the final, structural failure. Saturday morning, I bought a heavier jacket and a real mattress. I updated the emergency contact on my insurance policies and forwarded a couple of work emails. Nothing dramatic, just logistics. When you spend your life managing systems, you know that a breakdown isn't about noise and fury. It's about dependencies finally snapping. And for years, I had been the central, critical dependency for Aurelia's entire operating system. I hadn't just been underwriting it financially with my own income during the lean early years. I had been underwriting it structurally. The vendor discounts, the deferred payments, the special rates on utilities that wasn't magic. That was me, calling in favors, leveraging my company's reputation, and personally guaranteeing contracts. I wasn't her husband. I was her pro bono supply chain manager with a wedding band. And now, she had looked me dead in the eye and said, "Leave." So I left. And with me went the invisible scaffolding she never even knew was there. On Monday morning, at my desk at the consulting firm, my real job, I began the methodical process of untangling myself. It didn't require revenge. I didn't have to torch anything. All I had to do was stop softening the edges of reality for them. I started making calls, calm, professional calls. First, the poultry supplier. For years, I'd brokered a handshake deal with the owner, an old college acquaintance. This deal gave Aurelia extended payment terms, priority shipments, and wholesale discounts that shaved 20% off every chicken breast that touched their grill. "Hi, David. It's Elias Vance," I said into my headset. "I'm calling about the Aurelia account. I'm stepping away from its management. I'd like you to transfer the account to standard terms, effective immediately." David was surprised, but professional. "Sure thing, Elias. So, that's net 15. Market rates? Payment on delivery for new orders?" "That's correct," I said. "The new contact will be Sterling Monroe." I could almost hear David wince over the phone. Next, the utility contract. Sterling used to brag about how their connections kept the bills low, as if he'd wrestled the electric company into submission through sheer charisma. The reality was I had bundled Aurelia's account into a commercial bracket designed for multi-location chains, using my firm's portfolio as leverage. I had personally underwritten the guarantees. One phone call. "Please remove my name and my firm as the guarantor for account number 7B441. It should revert to a single location small business tariff." The rep on the other end didn't ask why. To them, it was just a checkbox in a database. But I knew what that checkbox meant. I knew it meant a 30 to 40% rate hike. Finally, the point of sale system. The slick, digital interface that managed orders, payments, and inventory. My personal credit card was on file for the monthly subscription, a premium enterprise package I got at a discount through a corporate partner. I logged into the portal. Change billing information. He deleted my card. Downgrade plan. I selected the basic retail pricing package. The system would still work, but it would be slower, have fewer features, and cost them twice as much. By midweek, the confirmation emails rolled in. Supplier terms updated, utility tariff adjusted, service provider billing address changed. Each line of bureaucratic language was a quiet, clean stroke of a guillotine blade. This wasn't gloating, it was housekeeping. It was cleaning my side of the street. Because the truth is, systems don't care about feelings. They care about balance sheets and dependencies. Lorelei had treated me like a replaceable cog, forgetting that the entire machine ran through me. And now, the machine was about to learn its own weight. The first signs of trouble arrived the way a hangover does, not with a dramatic bang, but with a sticky, inconvenient throbbing. On Monday morning, Aurelia's poultry supplier sent their first invoice under the new terms. It included a new line item. Payment due upon delivery. No net 30 grace period, no handshake promises, no Elias smoothing things over with a friendly phone call. Just full price, upfront, in cash or certified check. By noon, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Lorelei. "Hey, did you change something with the suppliers? They're saying we need to pay before they'll even unload the truck. This is ridiculous." I stared at the message while sipping coffee in my new apartment, the one that was finally starting to feel like mine. I had bought a plant. Then I set the phone face down, screen dark. Ridiculous indeed, I thought. Imagine that, a business asking to be paid for its goods and services. By Wednesday, the energy company chimed in. Sterling called me this time, his voice thick with the blustering annoyance of a man who believes the world is personally conspiring against him. Elias, the electric bill jumped 30%. What the hell happened? We've been on the same plan for years. Correction, Sterling, I said flatly, my voice devoid of emotion. I kept you on that plan for years. Now you're on standard commercial rates. There was a stunned silence on the line, broken only by Sterling sputtering. That's robbery. It's price gouging. No, Sterling. That's the market. You've just been living on a subsidy called me. Oh, he tried to chuckle, a strained, wheezing sound, as if this were all a misunderstanding we could clear up over a beer. Come on, son. You know we've got the Harvest Festival coming up. Reservations are packed. We can't handle surprises like this right now. Just fix it. Fix it. The two words that had defined the last decade of my life. Not my problem anymore, I said. Good luck. I ended the call. By Friday, the facade began to visibly crack. I heard through a friend that the servers at Aurelia, poor kids working double shifts for tips, were gossiping in the back about smaller portions. Sterling, in a desperate attempt to cut costs, had started ordering cheaper cuts of meat and reducing the size of the side dishes. A new review landed on Yelp that evening. Used to love Aurelia, but something has changed. My favorite chicken dish suddenly had a smaller portion, and they charged us $8 for what looked like a side of wilted lettuce. The atmosphere is still nice, but the nickel and diming feels gross. I couldn't have written better poetry myself. The real crisis hit on Saturday night. The inevitable happened. The walk-in refrigerator, a temperamental old beast I'd personally resurrected with duct tape and a multimeter on at least 3 separate occasions, shorted out. Normally, I'd be there at 1 a.m., saving them thousands of dollars in spoiled inventory. Instead, I was on my new couch, feet up, watching a crime documentary where the murder weapon was, ironically, a deep fryer. My phone started buzzing, and buzzing, and buzzing. First Sterling, twice. I ignored it. Then Lorelei. Ignored. Then a frantic text chain erupted. Lorelei. Fridge is down. We're losing all the product for tomorrow's brunch. Please just tell me what to do. Sterling. This is childish, Elias. You're hurting the family. Lorelei. Elias, I know you're mad, but come on. We're drowning here. I let the messages pile up, a digital monument to their helplessness. Then, I typed back one single, cold sentence addressed to both of them. Please contact your service provider. Cold? Absolutely. But I had warned them. Systems don't care about feelings, and their system, stripped of its Marcus-shaped safety net, was in freefall. By the following week, the panic had reached full volume. Suppliers demanded deposits. Utility bills arrived with late penalties stacked on top of the new, higher rates. Customers noticed the menu prices creeping up, like bad inflation jokes. Staff, tired of excuses and bounced paychecks, began to quit mid-shift. And through it all, I heard from mutual acquaintances that Lorelei still clung to her mantra. We'll get through this. Elias is just being petty. No, Lorelei. This wasn't pettiness. This was reality. It took 2 weeks. 2 weeks without me, and Aurelia went from a buzzy local hotspot to a cautionary tale with a side of wilted arugula. The signs were everywhere. The Yelp reviews multiplied like cockroaches. Hostess seemed lost. We waited an hour for an entree that came out cold. Place used to feel so polished. Now it's like a cafeteria with mood lighting. The bill was double what it used to be for the same meal. The manager blamed supply chain issues. Translation, they don't know what they're doing anymore. Even the loyalists, the ones who used to brag about their Sunday brunch at Aurelia, bailed after one too many $14 glasses of house wine that used to be $9. The financial fallout came faster than the spoiled produce. Sterling called me one morning, his voice stripped of its usual bravado, carrying the raw panic of a man watching his investment bleed out onto the pavement. Elias, listen, we're behind with payroll. Lorelei says she can float it on a credit card, but the interest and the staff is already threatening to walk. You've got to help us. Just renegotiate the supplier contracts, just until this storm passes. I sipped my coffee and let him spin his little desperation speech. Then I said, as calm as a judge delivering a sentence, Sterling, I told you once, I am not your technician, and I am not your supply chain manager. I'm done. This is your family, he barked, his voice cracking. No, I corrected, the words sharp and final. This is your family. I'm just the guy you assumed would keep bailing water out of your sinking boat forever. I hung up. That Friday night, Lorelei herself broke the silence. She showed up at my apartment. Yes, the same Lorelei who told me, if you don't like it, then leave. Funny how quickly leave turns into please come back when the bills come due. She knocked on the door like a neighbor borrowing sugar, not a wife whose empire was collapsing around her. I opened it, and there she was. Her hair was pulled into a careless bun, stray strands framing a face pale with sleepless nights. She was wearing that old university sweatshirt again, as if the fabric itself might summon some forgotten nostalgia that could save her. Elias, she started, her tone rehearsed but shaky. We need to talk. I leaned against the doorframe, not inviting her in. We? She flinched just a little. Yes, we. The restaurant's in trouble. Sterling's panicking. Suppliers are demanding deposits we don't have. The utility company is threatening to shut us off. Staff are threatening lawsuits. She took a breath. I know things got rough between us, but if you could just help us stabilize. I laughed. It wasn't a cruel laugh. It was the laugh of a man who finally sees the full, breathtaking absurdity of his situation in Technicolor. Stabilize, Lorelei. You don't need a husband. You need a bailout program from the federal government. Her eyes narrowed, the victimhood vanished, replaced by a flash of the old, sharp anger. So, you're just going to sit back and watch everything burn? I tilted my head, considering her question. Everything's already on fire, Lorelei. I just stopped playing firefighter. Oh, she tried the guilt angle next, her voice dropping to a near whisper. You built this with me, Elias. Aurelia was our dream. No, I said, the truth of it landing with the weight of a tombstone. Aurelia was your dream. My dream was respect. And guess which one went bankrupt first? Her lips tightened, her arms folding across her chest in a familiar, defensive posture. For a second, I thought she'd spit venom. Instead, she whispered, the words laced with a bitter disbelief. You're colder than I thought. I shrugged, a simple, final gesture of resignation. Turns out cold is the only climate you notice. By the next week, suppliers had pulled their credit lines entirely. I heard Sterling had taken out a second mortgage on his house trying to plug the holes. Lorelei scrambled with frantic promotions. Half off brunch, 2 for 1 cocktails. But you can't discount your way out of insolvency. The world thought I was punishing them. They didn't understand. I wasn't punishing anyone. I was simply gone. And the absence of scaffolding looks a lot like collapse. By the 3rd month, Aurelia wasn't a restaurant anymore. It was a waiting room for bankruptcy. The patio that once brimmed with influencers posting photos of flatbreads and cocktails sat empty, chairs stacked by 7 p.m. The staff that used to brag about their tips were gone. Even the neon sign out front began to flicker, as if the building itself was embarrassed to advertise what was inside. The final collapse came not with a bang, but with a clipboard. The health inspector showed up. Not because of me, not out of revenge, but because systems don't run on vibes. They run on compliance. Without a functioning walk-in refrigerator, without cleaning supplies being delivered on time, without the payroll to pay staff to mop the floors, Aurelia started to smell less like a bistro and more like a biology experiment. The inspector shut them down in 30 minutes flat. That evening, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree in hell. First Sterling, then Lorelei, then both at once in a duet of desperation. Sterling, Elias, you've made your point. We need you back. Just this once. Just fix the contracts. Fix the utilities. Get us some breathing room. Lorelei, Elias, please. I know I said things I shouldn't have. We can start over. Reset the accounts. I'll make it right. We'll make it right. I didn't reply right away. I poured myself a glass of water, sat on my couch, and let the quiet of my apartment stretch out around me. It was a clean, uncomplicated quiet. When I finally picked up the phone to reply to Lorelei, my voice was steady. There is no reset button, Lorelei. Respect was the price of admission, and that bill is long overdue. Silence on her end. Then her voice cracked, not with tears, but with a raw anger trying to disguise itself as vulnerability. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Watching me suffer. No, I said, and it was the honest truth. Enjoyment is a luxury. What you're mistaking for cruelty is just the bill finally arriving. And unlike me, the utility company doesn't accept apologies as payment. I ended the call. A month after Aurelia's doors were chained shut, a thick envelope arrived in my mailbox. No surprises. It was divorce paperwork. I didn't feel a stab of pain. I didn't throw the papers across the room in a fit of rage. I just sat at my desk, flipped through the pages, and signed where the little yellow sticky notes told me to. Our marriage had ended the same way the restaurant had. Not with fire, but with paperwork. Not with a scream, but with the silent finality of a signature. Respect isn't negotiable. Once it's gone, you can file for dissolution, just like you cancel a subscription you don't use anymore. The lawyers handled the rest. Sterling, I heard, tried to guilt me one last time through a mutual acquaintance, muttering something about family bonds. But family bonds, like supplier credit lines, snap the moment you stop paying into them. Weeks later, Lorelei sent a single, final text. "I hope you're well." I thought for a long time before replying. Then I typed back the only truth that was left. I am. I didn't add anything else. I wasn't a bridge to be crossed, a safety net to be used, or a door to be knocked on. I was just a closed chapter. And that was that. Friends kept asking me for a moral. People always want a neat takeaway, like life is a TED Talk. So here's mine. Dependency and disrespect can coexist for years, sometimes a lifetime, festering in the dark. But eventually, the bill always comes due. And when it does, you learn very quickly who knows how to pay and who thought the world ran on favors. Lorelei told me once, "If you don't like it, then leave." I did. The restaurant collapsed. The marriage dissolved. And me? I slept better than I had in a decade. When someone in your life mistakes your constant effort for gravity, a fundamental, effortless force of nature that will always be there to keep them grounded, don't argue. Don't try to explain. Just step aside. If they stumble, if they fall, if their world tilts on its axis, it was never gravity holding them up. It was you. And now, without you, they have finally learned the difference.